Cool. Okay. Welcome everybody who's joining. We're going to give it a couple of minutes for everyone to show up who's going to. I can see all the usual suspects starting to appear. So yeah, hi everyone. I'm going to keep this really informal. We should be able to see any questions that you've got coming through. Obviously, Insta is where we're primarily streaming this. You will find it on our YouTube as well. I think the guys are framing this big for the YouTube version, and obviously we're portrait on Insta. So you might want to hop over there, depending on what you want to look at, how much nosiness you want to do around the office. So I'm just going to keep a little eye for a minute and see who's arriving. I'll just give you a quick idea of where we are actually as well, just before we get started. So where I am stood right now is where I spend most of my day. This is KipperTie's headquarters in Surrey in the UK. And as you can tell, it's a new build. They just finished it. This place is from the 1700s. It's a beautiful building, which we're very lucky to have. Makes it a nice place to come to work. Inspiring kind of place, and pretty traditionally British as well. So yeah, it's a nice place to be. We're only a small team here, so yeah, it's all open plan. We'll save you the chaos the other side of the camera though. This is my little zone. So just looking through, who have we got turning up here? Like I say, all the usual suspects. Good stuff. Okay, well, I'll kick off. I think anybody who's interested enough to hear me waffle is probably here by now. So before we get into new exciting stuff, and there's new exciting stuff lurking just down the corner here, I just want to run through a bit of history. We don't really do this live stream thing. I'm no Scott Balcom. I don't have that endurance, but I thought it'd be quite nice just to chat to you guys, and like I say, keep it light, keep it easy. It's a nice way of communicating with everyone. And again, for anybody who's just joining, I should be able to be fed any kind of questions that people have got along the way. I know what some of them are going to be, when, how much. Yeah, we'll get to that stuff. So yeah, a little bit of backstory, just for anybody who's not particularly aware of KipperTie, or who's a little bit newer to the fold. As a company, we've been around a long time, 1999. So we've just celebrated our 25th anniversary, which makes me feel older than the grey in the beard suggests. And for a good period now, we've actually been producing products. We're a production company originally, and we still are. So everything this side of the building is the guys in production, and everything this side, we work on the products. That kind of interactivity between the two is a really key thing for me, and for our customers, hopefully, as well. We use the gear and we make the gear, and that's the crux of it, is we want to make stuff that we would want to use. So it's been quite a while that we've been doing it now. Our first foray into products was with OLPFs for DSMC1 bread cameras, and I'm sure there's people out there still using that gear. We still sell the DSMC2 OLPFs for infrared, for full spectrum. We still, have a lot of people doing really interesting stuff with that, both in wildlife and creative kind of uses. But there's been a build-up. We built up from that to a drop-in ND system for the Raven. We went from there to a revolver, which was my big idea at the time. Really wanted ND that was just ready to go, and couldn't find any satisfactory way of doing it. So that accelerated the whole, well, if it doesn't exist, let's make it. And revolver has been a bit of a stalwart for the red users since that time. And obviously we've broadened out into other kinds of mounts, small amount of gear for other kinds of cameras. And as things stand at the moment for DSMC3, we've got a range of RF mount products, and we've got the Strata for the Raptor, very specifically tailored to the front of that camera. And going back about, where are we? Almost a year, I reached a point where I thought, you know what? We've got to look at the next generation of what we're doing. What's the philosophy going to be? What are we going to do to really excel? I love the fact that we've got a product line which has longevity. People can take stuff that they already have, keep on using it, keep on recycling, but it can't last forever because underlying technology shifts as well, and certain problems, we needed to find new ways to address them. So my hit list was basically trying to do as much as possible for as little as possible, answer every single ask that we had. Full frame has become a big thing in the interim between when we first created ND products and now. So full frame coverage was essential. On top of that, we've got to keep the ease of use, the flexibility. I love building something that is bespoke and super tough and works really well for a specific camera, but interchangeable is better if we can do that. I would have loved it to be cheaper. I want better quality filters. I want more of them. Big one, and maybe this is living in a not so sunny part of the world, I really need to be able to jump straight to a clear filter. I mean, going back to when Red first released the motion mount, I was beside myself when that came out. I thought, fantastic, got to have it. And I loved it for all sorts of reasons, but so often it had to come back off the camera because we needed that last stop and a bit of light. So yeah, jumping straight to a clear, really high on the list as well. But on top of that, I wanted to try and preserve our customer philosophy as well. So, it's a tricky thing trying to run a small business, make sure that you actually make some money, but also keep the honesty, the openness, the professionalism, all the stuff that you really want to feel good about. And I know that we do our best to keep the working environment here for my team, as good as we can, as good as we can make it, and we hope that that flows through for customers as well. We try and keep the customer service side as hot as we can possibly make it. But yeah, we need to be able to produce products that we can look after in a way that professionals really need. So that was my hit list for a new product, was basically, I want all the things that we've already got, but more, better, and for less money. That's what I would want as the customer. And that's what we've kind of challenged ourselves to actually deliver. And I think that's pretty much where we've got ourselves to. The core thing for me, though, is I also don't want to supersede stuff that people already own. I don't want to be making things that are just like your iPhone. Oh, it's a new one. Why is it a new one? Well, just because it's a new one. Buy the new thing. We need something different, something better, but we also need it to fit in. We've got a lot of respect for competitive products. We've got a lot of respect for our own customers and the money they've invested in their own products. So we don't want to make something and just say, well, it's the new one. Never mind the old one, that's no good anymore. Everything that we currently make, we will still make. So Revolver is still a valid and effective system. The Strata and the Strata PLND even are valid systems with their own advantages, their own kind of key points. And what we're looking at with Strata Electro is another variant, another way of doing things. Now, I think it's an excellent way of doing things, but engineering this stuff is all about compromises. And there are going to be times where it's not the right answer. There's going to be times where what we've already produced is the right answer. And there are going to be times where what other fantastic people out there in the industry have produced is the right answer. It's about building up this ecosystem, not about wiping out what came before and saying, okay, well, spend your money again. That's not what we're about. So I'll get straight into showing you physically what we've got. and I'll explain a bit about where we are in the process right now. We're a tiny team. It's hard work developing products, and everybody says that, I know. We're about a year in, and we're at a point where we have a working system, but we're not ready to ship stuff yet. I know everybody is hoping that I'm going to say, yeah, it all ships tomorrow, come get them. I wanted to talk to everybody now while we're at the stage where we're confident in everything, everything's ready, but we're just starting to ramp up actually producing things. So this little guy right here, and I'll give you a size comparison, is Strata Electro. Next to it is our Strata PLND. Just to give you an idea, Strata Electro is small enough that it fits inside the form factor of a Komodo. And it's actually small enough that in alternate mount versions, it'll fit on an FX3. It's really trim, even though we've squeezed the full frame glass coverage in there. RF mount to PL, RF mount to EF. We've got an E-mount version to PL. And of course, it's the hot topic at the moment. We have, I'm going to call it Nikon Z-mount because I'm British. It's not a Nikon or a Nikon. It's a Nikon as far as I'm concerned. And it's a Z-mount, not a Z-mount. But hey, you know what I'm talking about. We'll have that. And critically, I think also we're going to have L-mount as well. So we want to support a broad range of cameras with this. And there are going to be brackets and associated bits and pieces to make that work as well. So this is all in the very raw metal, but that's an FX3 support. These guys here, the Raptor, a Komodo, Canon R5C. It's a pretty universal system that we can build support around. But of course, you know, a lot of people are starting to build nice locking mounts. Red, you know, have doubled down on the locking RF mount at the moment, which, you know, in this instance, doesn't need a lot of extra support necessarily. So yeah, we talk a little bit more about how this works. And I know you'll have seen what things look like from some of our other socials. So this is basically a physical glass ND system, but it has electronic actuation. It's a hybrid though, in that the control that we use physically is a physical switch that can't go missing. If you have it set to clear, clear is what you get. You know, there's no arguing with a physical switch. Obviously, it actuates through electronics, but it means that if you power the camera down, power it back up again, you're going to get the value that you asked for. We also have some other hard switches. Now, again, we're at the prototype level here, so there's some engravings not showing up, but we have a power on-off, and we have a remote setting as well. That will allow us to connect to either C-Motion ARRI protocol or to Teradek RT, so that we can use remote actuation of the filters. As it stands right now, we don't have integration through the Red UI. We're targeting really a broader audience here, so we want to make sure the system works without necessarily those very tight integrations. But also, once we control it through a UI, we're into the firmware/software issue of what was my setting? Where did I leave it? And like I say, I'm a big fan of the physical switch. You know, we set it to a particular value, and that's what we get. Which means that, you know, you don't have any kind of way of messing things up along the way. You know, kind of the best of both worlds: electronic movements, physical switches. Yeah. So, as I say, it's pretty small. It's pretty slim. One of the big things I know people want to know is full frame coverage, which we've got. Nice large pieces of glass in there. The depth for elements, rear elements on PL is about the same as Revolver, about the same as everybody else who's doing any kind of rear filtration. Still, the greatest step that you'll get on something like that is the Strata PLND, and again, it's one of the reasons why it continues to be a good, strong, valid product, because it skips entirely around the RF mount. So yeah, very similar to what you'd expect. The specific list of lenses that doesn't work is something that always comes up. It's much the same story as we've always had on that front. There are some popular vintage designs and some unusual modern stuff like the Nisi Athenas, which have very deep rear elements, and we can't cover everything. We have to have some kind of give and take with this. So yeah, that's the status as far as that is concerned. The way the filtration actually works, obviously I'm a geek about this stuff. It's we've really done our level best to make this exceptional and unusual. You'll have seen from the videos on our feed, the filters move vertically. There's actually 3 pieces of moving glass to give us 8 filter combinations, and some of that is done by having multiple filter strengths that are actually contained on a single physical piece of glass. One of the reasons that we built it that way is to reduce any changes with back focus that you can get when multiple layers of glass are moved. We've actually combined filters onto the same exact substrate. Our filter manufacturing partners probably hate me for that. Sorry, Aurel, that was a tough one for those guys to get right. But yeah, it's about engineering it to the best possible route that we can. The mechanism, I hesitate to say sealed. It's enclosed. It's fully enclosed. You can't touch any of the moving parts with your hands, and it's going to be hard for dust to get in there. Dust finds a way, like life, I'm afraid. And the glass, much like everything we've produced so far, is very easy to clean. However, it would be an engineering, take it to a tech job if you did manage to get something deep inside. And again, this is why we still think that we have a broad, valid range of alternatives. Revolver is still probably the most robust and simple approach to rear of lens filtration. This is more complex, but it answers a huge number of questions all in one hit. Okay, so I'm going to check my crib sheet and see what I've talked about. Obviously, RF to EF, we pass the data through. That's a passive process. It's not doing anything. There's no firmware required to make that function. Although some people's implementations of that I know have firmware involved. Ours doesn't. It's totally passive, and it means as a result that any updates that are made, either the camera or the lens end, will be honored because we don't really do a lot. We just pass that information through. We have the hardware in there to do iData on the PL variant. Not going to be enabled at launch. It's subject to some discussion still. But unlike some of our previous stuff where we physically just left space, in this implementation, we've got the hardware, we've got the PCB there that looks after it, but we need to kind of handle the process to get that ready. As I say, we're not quite ready to ship this thing yet. We know we've solved all the problems that are significant, and we're just ramping up the physical production. Again, I won't show you the chaos, but there are boxes and boxes of intricate components taking up lots of space in this building right now as we start to ramp up the manufacturing for that. Also, an addition, as it were, that can either be added further down the line or at purchase is the 4-pin LEMO for remote control. And I know not everybody's going to want that, but that is something that can be added later if necessary. LEMO connectors are painfully expensive. It costs us almost as much to put the LEMO connector on the PCB as it does to make the rest of the PCB. So, although this is meant to be a premium quality pro product, we are trying to make sure that it's kept accessible. We're not loading it up with unnecessary things like that. So that'll be an option. And further down the line, as we get the firmware rolled out for remote control, that'll come to life. Rollouts through firmware are not something we're super familiar with. Most of that stuff we have always engineered in the very hardware, physical, optical world. This does have, like I say, active electronics inside it. There's a USB port for both additional power if you need it and for updating firmware as we go along. So the bit that I know everybody's probably waiting to hear is the how much and the when. We're going to roll these out version-wise gradually. There's a common core to a lot of what's going on inside the mount, but the PL version, RF to PL will come first, followed by the EF, followed by the E to PL, followed further on by L mount, Z mount, and so on. For the core mount, regardless of whether it's the EF version, the PL, all of these are going to sit at the same price point. So in pounds, UK pounds, 1,750, which is about $2,200, about 2,050 euros. That is the core chunk. We will make additional brackets and bits and pieces available separately. You can customize that when you place an order. And we're trying to be as competitive as we can. We're not a high volume business. We're not small rig churning out, cheap, simple stuff. We're using the high grades of material. We're using the proper kit. But nonetheless, we're going to keep these kind of accessory brackets as affordable as we can. And as far as the time is concerned, I'd wanted to be launching this about now, which is partly why I'm talking to you guys about it right at this moment. But we're looking at a manufacturer's vague later this summer. That's my weaselly phrase for when we'll be ready with it. I don't want to be taking lots of pre-orders, guys. I know lots of people are jumping up and down saying, take my money. We'll take your money when we're ready. And we're trying to enact a philosophy that a position that we found ourselves in. We're trying to have stock. Crazy idea, I know. We've existed as build to order for a long time, but as customers will have found recently, we've got stock. We are able to build up a stockpile and have things ready to go. And that helps the resellers, it helps us, and obviously it helps you guys at the customer end as well. So at the point where you're able to push the button, we'll be able to ship them very quickly. But like I say, I wanted to talk to you guys about it now because this is me blowing my deadline, really. This is the point where I wanted to be saying, yes, come get it. We're not quite there. There's been a little bit of feature creep in terms of additional mounts and additional functions. So it's been as rapid a process as we can make it, but it's a challenge to do this stuff. But yeah, again, headline stuff. It's £1,750, regardless of what flavor it comes in. RF to PL, RF EF, E to PL, future additional mounts coming too. You've got clear 0.3, 0.6, 0.9, all the way through to ND 2.1. So one-stop increments and real glass filters. So no problems with polarization, no problems with vignetting, no problems with other stuff that comes from either electronic or polarization-based ND. Straight glass. Proper full frame coverage, and that's for Raptor, which is obviously full frame plus. Easy full frame coverage on smaller cameras, and supporting a surprising range of stuff. We've managed to keep the design pretty small. I don't know that we'll necessarily make a mounting bracket for it, but just to give you an idea, that's the physical fit and size onto a Sony A7. So we've managed to squeeze a lot of stuff into a pretty small space. I'm going to have a quick look and see, because I've been dodging whether there's any questions. LPL, yeah. LPL, we can physically make the mount, but the issue is we need to respect the space required by the LPL standard. So LPL and EF share a flange depth, but the problem is the vast majority of LPL lenses want to extend relatively deep. So yeah, it's technically possible to create the mount, but you then run out of room for the common LPL lenses because of the way they've been designed. So we won't be doing LPL. Yeah, love to, but right now it's just not really possible. In fact, when we look at just LPL to RF, even just doing a straight adaptation LPL to RF requires a bit of fudging about whether or not you're actually providing true clearance for the LPL standard. So our LPL Strata, for example, because it circumvents the RF mount, is one of the few LPL mounts for an RF camera that actually has the full depth that you might need for certain lenses. Will there be E to EF? E to EF, I'm not satisfied with anybody's implementation of it yet. I'm not saying never, but we need to do that reverse engineering from the ground up in order to be satisfied with it. I know there are people out there, lots of products out there that will do E-mount to EF, and myself and the guys in production as well have used them, and they bite you in the backside just when you don't need them to. They do silly things, f-stops move about, things are sluggish. So from my perspective, I'm much happier to say, sorry, we don't have that right now, than yes, of course, and find that it's not as good as it should be. It needs to be 100%, and I've not seen anybody. Where does manufacturing take place? Well, manufacturing is a mixture. Like everybody, we use overseas suppliers for a hell of a lot of stuff, but all of the assembly and the vast majority of the physical work actually happens in this building. So, I mean, I'll give you a little example. I can drag out one of many components. We have CNC work that is done to beautiful standard, both in the UK, in China, in India, all over the world. And it depends on the part. There are some parts that are best done here. There are some parts that are best done elsewhere. The glass is all our own specification. It's made in China, but it's done to our standards and done to a formula that we've worked pretty hard on. And that's been the case for a long time. You won't find these filters in anybody else's systems, and we're pretty picky about how they need to work. So yeah, I mean, the core of it is we do the vast majority of the work here in this building. It might not look like an industrial powerhouse, as it were, but yeah, little team of us, myself, Natasha, Anita, Fiona, we physically build the stuff here, and that means from bare components through to shrink wrapped boxes going out the door. Remote version, will it be compatible with the Red app control? There's no reason why it can't be. We haven't started work on that. So yeah, we have, essentially, we're in a position where inside our device, there's a microcontroller which can speak to either the camera that it's connected to, or it can talk through serial or USB. And yeah, we have the scope to do just about anything, but we haven't done that yet. Again, the pre-order question, yeah, I'm only going to take orders when we can ship. And that won't be all that far away, but I don't want to sit on anybody's money for no reason. And yeah, the dust-proof thing, I've touched on this already as well. It's enclosed. Okay, now dust gets in everywhere. It gets inside your lenses, which have no reason to let dust in. You look at the design of a lens and think, how did the dust get in between the elements? And it will find its way in there. However, compared to our other products, where we've basically taken the philosophy that it's so easy to clean any dust that lands, that why would you try and keep the dust out permanently. I mean, bear in mind, every time you switch a lens, you expose your sensor to dust. So it's one of those things. We need to strike a balance. The cameras that we're equipping are not dust proof 100% themselves. They're not waterproof. They're not, we're not part of an ecosystem that is fully proof against every environmental concern. However, of all the products that we've developed, this one is the most protected from that point of view. There are cover glasses in place over the top of the moving parts, and the casing and all of the other bits and pieces fully enclose that in a way that means that it's very hard to get dust in there. So yeah, that was that. US resellers around the world, basically anywhere who will sell you a red camera, are authorized to sell our stuff. You'll find in a lot of cases, we're really encouraging resellers to start to hold stock in the same way that we have stock here. And obviously that's not been possible in the past because of the fact that we were building exclusively to order. We really want to shift that so that things are easier for the customer. But yeah, if I could say anything on that front to push through to the ears of the resellers, lean on them. Say, guys, can you keep some stock of KipperTie stuff? I'd love that. But yeah, in all seriousness, yeah, we will ship direct, but it's much easier in a lot of cases to buy through resellers who are local to you, because you don't have any stress about customs or other kind of shipping concerns. But we can ship worldwide from here in the UK. Cool. Maximum rear element depth is about the same as for Revolver. So again, it's a little bit of a tricky one because the shape of the rear end of a PL lens is not a single factor. We've got about 22 mil of space, but the shape is as important as anything else. So what we've always provided are physical test tools that you can use. There's a downloadable version of that available as well. If you don't physically have either the lens or the device, you can print it off, pass it to a rental house, wherever you need it to go, and say, please, can you check whether this is going to work? One of the biggest bugbears I have with this is that we work in this niche industry where things are produced in very low quantities. And for example, super speeds come up all the time as, is it going to fit? Sadly, in most cases, the answer is no, it's not going to. But the thing is, you ask a bunch of different cinematographers, what is a super speed? What's a Mark 1? What's a B speed? You'll get a load of different answers, either because people don't know the details, or because they've misunderstood, or because there are just multiple answers to the same question. Same applies to lenses from a lot of manufacturers. There are variations over time, and sometimes even the manufacturer can't tell you which one was a specific variant. So there's no substitute for physically checking. And we try and make that possible as much as we can. Will we make Revolver for L mount? Yes, that's on the cards as well. Like I say, Revolver's not going anywhere. It's an S35 plus coverage on Revolver, and I'm working hard to see if we can work on the price for Revolver again. We've been making them a long time now. We're getting very good at it. We're well practiced. And I still see it as a really valid product. So yeah, that will be reworked for L mount in the future. Obviously, there's some recently announced cameras which are wearing an L mount, which is going to be a bit more interesting than perhaps it's been in the past for people who want filtration. Cool. Okay. So, unless anybody else has any other questions, I'm going to keep watching my little comms here and see if anything else pops up. There was a bonus that I was going to add as well, a little bonus reveal. And if you've been following our socials, you'll have seen. I don't have anything very exciting to show here because a blank CFexpress card is about as unexciting as it gets to look at. But it's what's inside that's the really interesting part. So obviously we've been known for making the long take for DSMC2, and that product has past its lifespan now. We're still supporting them, but what's inside is very, very long out of date, and obviously DSMC2 is becoming history as well. CFexpress was a great choice in terms of a type of media. The list of cameras that support Type B cards is getting longer and longer, and they're fast. But usually the bottleneck is offload. So what we are bringing out as the long take 4 terabyte is based on the next generation of CFexpress technology. So I don't know whether you guys keep up with this. What's in your cameras right now, what virtually all the faster CFexpress cards are, is about to be superseded. We're not the first people to do it, but we're close. So the version 4 CFexpress standard is substantially faster. And right now, we don't have a matching reader. ProGrade do, and it's very good. So this little guy here that ProGrade produce is a USB 4 card reader for CFexpress Type B. It's not very expensive. And I mean, I've had people say to me, what's USB 4? What have I got? What am I supposed to do about that? In a lot of cases, if you've got a current Apple computer, if you've got an up-to-date machine of any kind, you've probably got USB 4. You just haven't had anything to use with it yet. It's the same USB-C connection that you're familiar with, speed ramped up. And yeah, the difference is really quite significant when it comes to practicality on set, when it comes to the practicality of working with large amounts of media and getting the offloads figured out. So excuse my scrappy notes on this, but just to give you a flavor, we've got a lot of the 660 gig RED cards for our Raptor. Now, if you fill one of those up, it's about 15-minute offload if you've got somewhere fast enough to take the file. The read, it's not, I'm not talking sort of raw kind of benchmark figures, but the real world, we get a bit over 700 megs a second if we're going to a fast enough destination. So 15 minutes to back up a full card. We've also got a bunch of the 2 terabytes, which are the Angelbird Mark IIs. Those take a bit over 40 minutes to offload for 2 terabytes. But what we do there, I come onto a bit of philosophy that I know I don't see eye to eye with everybody on, and I really want to try and push this concept anytime I talk to DITs about this, and to just to crew in general. Just because we have very large media doesn't mean we need to shoot all the way to the end of the media before we offload. Regular offloads, if you're in an environment that works for that, are one of the safest things you can do, because the safest place your media is on the originating media itself. And the next thing that you need to do after that is get it copied somewhere as soon as possible. The longer it sits in one place, the less safe you are. Now, a lot of people think, well, I'll just have lots of small cards. The problem is, what tends to happen is you increase your exposure to risk, because every card carries its own physical risks. And in a lot of cases, the smaller cards end up meaning that you recycle them while you're shooting. So your gold standard virgin recording that is on that original media gets wiped in favor of a backup made on set while the day is still going on. So the ideal, really, as far as I'm concerned, is have the largest media that you possibly can, back it up regularly, not waiting until it's full, switch the cards through, keep the backups rolling, keeps the dailies coming, it keeps the footage safe. And for that to work, the media needs to be really fast and it needs to be really cheap. And that way you can get to the end of your shoot, end of your day, not have lots to back up still, not have lots and lots of individual cards causing confusion. Did the tape come off this one? Was this the one that needs formatting? Is that the one that needs formatting? Bad stuff happens in those circumstances. But it relies on big, fast, cheap media. So yeah, long take 4 terabyte, like I say, USB 4 readers will allow hugely faster offload speeds. So 700, 800 megabytes a second is what you might expect with a traditional reader and a CFexpress card at the moment. We're talking 2,500 as a sustained offload speed. The specs on paper say higher still, over 3,000, but we're seeing absolutely rock solid 2,500. It's 340% faster. So, for example, if you fill a card up to that same point that you would shoot until with your 660 cards, that's a few takes, it's a few bits and pieces that you've done, time for the team to swap the cards over, keep that process rolling. That 660 gigs of data would take just over 4 minutes to offload. So that can happen as a seamless part of the process because it's so quick. Alternatively, if you fill that 4 terabyte card all the way up, you're still potentially looking at only just over 25 minutes to offload the whole thing. A 2 terabyte card right now takes over 40. So it really shifts the perspective on how you could approach things. You could go to shoot with a couple of 4 terabyte cards, keep switching and cycling them, constantly have the media in a safe place, and walk away at the end of your day's shoot with the original media on the original cards in its entirety. And then obviously, all of that does come down to price. All very well. What if it's too expensive? £1,250, so approximately $1,500 for the 4 terabyte. Basically, we're pretty much on a par with Red's pricing for their 4 terabyte cards, but just screamingly fast for offload. I know the question that lots and lots of people are going to have for that is it Red approved? It's not Red approved at the moment. We can have it approved. It would fly through those tests with a grin on its face because we need around about 800 megabytes a second sustained. We have multiple times that sustained right the way through to the end of the card. Really, though, in the volumes that we're dealing with for this market, we'd be adding another $100 to every card to go through that verification process with Red. If the market says we need it and nobody wants them without that tick in the box, then yeah, sure, we'll push that button. But yeah, it carries a cost. We do a hell of a lot of testing. The manufacturer do a huge amount of testing, including some very horrible things to do to cards. And we're very satisfied with the quality. For example, one of the tests that is part of the suite of testing for the long take 4 terabyte is repeatedly removing the card while the camera is recording and then reinserting. And it will put up with that repeatedly. It has technology inside which allows it to do a safe closing off of a write. Even after it's physically been removed from the camera, the card is still awake and wrapping things up neatly, which means that, yeah, you can do really nasty things like yank the card out mid-record and not break stuff. So yeah, really happy with the robust nature of that CFexpress card. Those, in terms of shipping, much sooner. Obviously, this is something that we've partnered with a manufacturing firm on. We don't literally make CFexpress cards in this building. There's a limit to what tech we can turn around in here. But this is a specific spec request that we've had put together. We're really happy with how it's turned out. And I'm expecting probably inside the coming month, we'll have these shipping to people. So yeah, looking forward to that. Couple of extra little questions popping up, talking about Strata Electro. Excuse me while I have a quick sip. Is the clear filter anti-reflective? Oh boy, is it anti-reflective. Yes, this has been, all of the filters have multi-layer coatings, and the coatings have been the subject of a hell of a lot of work. So, I mean, I actually had lying around here some of my reporting on this, where we've been reducing halation and halos over time with our supplier. And yeah, you can see probably over my shoulder some of the improvements and relative performance that you get depending on the types of multi-coating. And obviously, you know, we put a lot of effort into getting those coatings into a satisfactory position. I've never quite understood, you know, lots of people have told me in the past that they've approached filter manufacturers of traditional, you know, 4x4 PV size filters to say, can we have anti-reflective coatings? It baffles me that the answer has been no in a lot of cases, because although it's hard to do it to the standard that we're trying to here, basic anti-reflection coatings are pretty trivial. It only gets hard when you start to stretch the boundaries in the way that we want to. So, long answer for a short question: yes, anti-reflective coatings, lots of them, and they're relatively complex. Another point about the filtration, just while we're in that zone, is they are full spectrum NDs, and effectively that means that the IR performance of the camera is unaffected. Now, I'm not saying there that no IR goes through the ND filters, but the attenuation of the IR is matched to the attenuation of the visible image, if that makes sense. So it means that effectively the native performance of the camera is what you get. If we put a hard ND in there with a steep drop off for the IR, it would mean that the variation in resulting image quality would be greater. We're looking for internal consistency between the filters in terms of the color performance. So yeah, trade in for old models. Sorry guys, no. We're not going to be doing any kind of trade-ins. If you're one of the stalwart customers, you know who you are. There are plenty of you guys out there who've been with us from day one. If you're buying direct, we'll see what we can do to look after you. But yeah, we won't be doing trade-in stuff, not least because I think, you know, very genuinely believe that Strata PLND and Revolver are still super valid products. And yeah, I don't think anybody needs to be replacing them in that sense. Can it be powered through RCP2 with /I data? So in terms of how the power works, it's worth a quick little exploration. It has its own internal battery. It has the ability to top that battery up through the lens mount, which it does just by behaving like a lens and taking a little bit of power from the lens mount. It has a USB connection, which you can plug into any other USB port to provide it with a top-up of power. You can also send power through the 4-pin on the side. It will work for hours without being topped up, because when it's sitting there not changing filters, it's really got very little to do. So even though the battery is tiny, yeah, it lasts a long, long time. What ND filters are actually in it? If you mean which values, clear, 0.3, 0.6, 0.9, 1.2, 1.5, 1.8, 2.1. If you mean who makes them, they are KipperTie's own. We have attempted to work alongside a number of major filter manufacturers, and don't want to be too prideful about it, but our ask was too great for most people. We've had to go out to the wider industry to try and find stuff that works as well as we want it to. It's not the same size as the Revolver cartridge, it's substantially bigger, and it is yeah, it is as neutral as we can possibly make it. Our specification calls for fractions of a % of allowable variation in the RGB images. can we have a simple push to clear button to go straight to clear? Well, to go straight to clear, you roll to clear. I mean, that's it. So yeah, you can go straight to clear. In terms of the remote options as well, yeah, that will be something that we've asked for. So for example, in the integration for the ARRI and CMotion protocol, yeah, a push button on a hand controller to go straight to clear is part of the plan there as well. Yeah, so recapping then, differences I would say necessarily and benefits, comparing it to Revolver and the Strata for Raptor. So Revolver is simple and it's a little more economical priced, and we're going to continue to work on that. Like I say, we want to try and squeeze the price a little bit more. And it's straightforward. If I want something that I can drag through any environment and polish the filter on my shirt and then stick it back in, yeah, Revolver is fantastic for that. It will take anything you throw at it. The compromise is that the coverage is smaller, the number of filters available is only 4, not 8, and it's not necessarily as physically robust. It's a cantilever design with a big slot in the side, which means that you do need to watch your lens support if you're using bigger lenses. On the flip side, comparing it to the Strata PLND for Raptor, one of the downsides is it's only for Raptor. You can't use it elsewhere. Fine if that's all you're using. One of the upsides of the Strata PLND is it's much deeper. It can accept longer projections of rear element on the lens. And it is a pure mechanical optical device, which has some attractions. You can put it through stuff that you can't put anything with electronics through. It will work and work and work. There's no battery to charge. There's no battery to deal with. Yeah, so the pure electromechanical nature of Strata PLND has some attractions on its own. It's also probably the most physically robust PL mount for an RF camera because it doesn't attach to the RF mount. Bolts straight onto the Q20s on the camera body. So you can be very safe using big heavy lenses without needing to worry about it. So hopefully they're starting to build the picture of why we're building up this roster of stuff rather than just saying Strata Electro is the new thing, so that's all you should ever want. So yeah. And yeah, Revolver, just to confirm, does Revolver not work for full frame? It's a your mileage may vary situation. Depending on the lens design, it can work absolutely fine on full frame. It has the height, but it doesn't have the width. And it depends on the design of the rear elements, on the way the image is projected. Commonly, telephoto lenses are going to actually be worse. Wide lenses, we tend to get away with it. But yeah, it's not in the same ballpark. The Strata Electro has a much larger filter. R5C in terms of Canon cameras, just looking at the questions here, we are targeting, this is my ignorance, I don't know it all, despite the best attempts. R3, I would have to check, probably, I'll find that out. And can you demo it on a camera? I'm not going to right now. We'll, I've got a lot of engineering prototypes and bits and pieces kicking around here. And really what I wanted to do was talk to you guys about it. We'll show something a bit more polished, because right now trying to demo multiple stops of ND in a dark office is not going to give you very good results. You won't be able to see how good our NDs are if all that happens is the picture goes black. So yeah, we'll continue to release more information, and we'll show some of the kind of quality tests and colorimetry tests as well over coming weeks as we're building up to the point where we're actually taking orders. Yeah, so we're about half an hour past how long I thought this would take. I am going to try and wrap things up there, and thank everybody for lots of questions, lots of involvement. It's really cool to be able to talk to everybody like this. I'm sure I'll probably have to do it again at some point. Always mixed feelings. I don't particularly like being in front of the camera, but also can't help but talk. So I have to kind of find the sweet spot between the two. Cool. Anything else on the chat that I need to pop up? Good stuff. Okay. So some cool new products on the way, nearly ready, really excited about it. Keep an eye on our socials as we go forward, and we'll keep feeding you the information. Cheers.